claim to be the creator, but I'm a savior. I take the strange variables of human life and make something.
Hey guys! In today's video, I'm going to be talking about hedge witches. Now, the reason I'm going to be talking about hedge witches is because I class myself as a hedge witch, and it's one of the subject matters that I've really wanted to talk about for quite a while. We all know there are many different names and different types of witches in modern witchcraft. You have witches who work with stars and astrology who call themselves cosmic witches. You have kitchen witches who work with herbs and food and other related things and are usually found in their kitchen. You have sea and water witches who generally work with the ocean, the sea, and other bodies of water. You have green witches that work with nature, and so on and so on. So what is a hedge witch? Now, the issue with this term is it can mean quite a few things. It's a bit of an obscure name, so to speak, for this particular practice because it can mean so many different things. Like with green witches and kitchen witches, it's usually very easy to distinguish what they are, but with hedge witches, it's slightly more complicated. The best place to start when talking about a hedge witch is to talk about where they come from. So way back in the day, you know, when we were all still like little communities and there were no such thing as big cities, you would have magical women and magical people who would be classed as witches, and they would usually live on like the edge of the village or the community and on the edge of the forest. So they would live sort of in between. You'd have the village on one side, you'd have the forest on the other, and they'd live sort of slap bang in the middle, on the edges of the village and on the edge of the forest. It was sort of an in-between place, and the phrase in-between place is quite important to hedge witchcraft, or at least from what I've personally looked into. The term hedge actually comes from like a garden hedge. In a lot of cases and in a lot of ways, hedge witches are extremely similar to green witches because most hedge witches work with and are connected to nature. But there is a bit more to hedge witches. Now, I'm going to be talking about hedge witchcraft from my own perspective and how I view it. Because it's such an obscure word in terms of this part of witchcraft, it can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different witches. So the way I would describe a hedge witch might not be a way another hedge witch might describe it. So we are just going by like my perspective, and I've quite recently got into hedge witchcraft. It's been like not even a full year that I've solidified using the term hedge witchcraft. Before this, I was using cosmic and green witch. So just bear with me on this, like, you know, it's all a learning curve, and I'm just hoping this video will help other people who might be a bit confused by hedge witchcraft like I was when I first heard of it. So one of the other things that some hedge witches do is they work between worlds. Some of them work with spirits and paranormal entities and thin places. I've wanted to mention thin places in a video for ages, so I'm really glad that we're finally getting to talk about this. Thin places are commonly mentioned and talked about in paranormal circles. They can be located on sacred ground, they can have really dense, intense energy, they can even be ley lines, located on ley lines. They are places that have high energy content and their overall vibe is just a bit different to your average place. Like, for example, if you're in a thin place, even if you're not that susceptible to magic and energy in any way, you'll just know you're in a thin place because the vibe will just be off. Not necessarily negatively off, it'll just be not what you're used to, and you'll be a bit more susceptible to strange occurrences. Lots of paranormal people go to thin places to commune with ghosts and spirits and entities. Some witches do this too, but not all witches do this. Thin places don't always have to be a physical place either. They could just be a time of year. So like Samhain and Litha are the 2 days of the year where the veil between worlds is most thin, and I would describe the entire day of both to be thin places. The hedge as a representation is a physical barrier between worlds. It's a barrier between the natural world, so everything that we see, the nature, the forest, the trees, the mountains, and also between the supernatural world. Now, this can be anything from ghosts to entities to goblins to Bigfoot. It can be anything, but it can also be places of high energy content. It can be other dimensions. It depends what you class as supernatural or what you class as a thin place. I personally class all these things as thin places or places where thin place things happen. But you know, it's down to interpretation, so I don't want to force any like thoughts or beliefs onto you. Just look into thin places a bit more and you'll see a bit more of what I mean if you're a bit confused. Hedge witches sort of operate and live as like conduits between these two worlds, and they work with energies from both. They use the energy of the natural and the supernatural worlds to amplify their own magic and energies when they're doing rituals, which is something I really resonate with because this is something that I do with my own rituals. I tend to borrow energy from these thin places or these thin events or these high energy content places whenever I'm doing my rituals, whenever I'm meditating, whenever I'm operating within the supernatural world, but I still want a connection to the natural world. Overall, there is a lot of debate on what a hedge witch actually is. So how I'm describing it could be completely different to how someone else is describing it. I just find that the way that I'm describing it in this video really resonates with me because I was really struggling to find my place in witchcraft and what sort of path I was going down, and finding the term hedge witch and how I've interpreted it has really made me feel like I belong somewhere. One thing I want to mention in this video actually is how I unintentionally found my own personal hedge. So in South Wales there is a little town called Taftswell, and it is my absolute favourite place in the whole world. The first time I went there was in about 2013-ish, maybe 2012. I went there once with two of my friends back in the day, and I just spent some time in one of the forests, and I absolutely fell in love with it. Didn't go back until about 2017, where me and my best friend decided to go up the mountain there, which is my actual favourite place in Taftswell, and I just fell in love with it all over again. Taftswell is my absolute favourite place on earth because I find it to be the perfect balance of the natural world and the urban world. Anyone who knows me in real life knows that I come from the capital city of Wales. I've lived here my entire life. I am a purebred Cardiffian. There's no two ways around it. But I absolutely love being out in forests. I love being next to streams. I love just being around all the natural things. And as I was sort of like semi-meditating, but more just having like a deep thought that like was just sort, I was just going with the thoughts and allowing it, I'll just call it casual meditation without it being meditation. And it was around the time that I started really looking into hedge witchcraft and what a hedge was. I came to the conclusion that Taftswell is a hedge. It's also called something like the mouth of the valleys. That's like a nickname for it, or the entrance to the valleys. I can't quite remember which one, because it is situated right on the mouth of where the valleys in South Wales start. Taftswell is just urban enough for me to not feel like I'm in the middle of nowhere, but it's so far removed from what Cardiff is that I feel like I'm surrounded by nature. And it is beautiful in Taftswell. Like, there's no two ways of denying or saying anything bad about it. It is gorgeous. There's mountains all over the place. There's forests all over the place. There's woodlands all over the place. There's caves all over the place. It's just the essence of the natural world intertwined with the urban world. And so for me, Taftswell works as a hedge because it is in between the two different worlds of Wales. There's also a lot of like discussion and talk about Taftswell being a thin place, which is something I can go into in an entirely different video, and I will at some point. I believe that Taftswell is 100% a thin place, and that makes even more sense with it being a hedge. So when I discovered that Taftswell was a hedge, this just resonated even more with me, and what's more important about that is it's my personal physical hedge. It's my place where I feel most at home. It's the place where I feel happiest. It's the place where I love to do my magic and my rituals the most. It's the place I love to hang out most. It's just a place where I feel like I belong. It's my hedge, and that's just something beautiful that I recently discovered after years of spending time there. So as a hedge witch myself, I feel like it's important to like tell you that I spend a lot of my time in nature. I love to perform all my rituals in nature, as I've mentioned, and I absolutely love going to find thin places. I love being in a place and really feeling out the energy of that place and feeling if it's getting hot or cold, or if it feels like something interesting could happen, or something not quite of this world, so to speak. These things all really go well with my magical practice because I like to bring in my witchcraft whenever I'm going on adventures, whenever I'm looking into thin places. I like to incorporate the thin places into rituals. It all just really like works super well together. I'm a huge Supernatural fan, both the TV show and supernatural concepts in general. I love looking into like Bigfoot, skinwalkers, wendigos. I've recently started looking into goblins with my boyfriend. I'm just gonna say hell yeah, check it out. My boyfriend showed it to me and I'm pretty obsessed. But I love all sorts of things like that, and I love how they're always talking about thin places in these documentaries or these videos, and I just find that that goes really well with Hedge Witchcraft. I also love that with thin places, it doesn't always mean that it's like a paranormal place. It usually just means that like dimensions between our world and other worlds are sort of overlapping and crisscrossing. Like whereas like say our world goes like that and one of these higher or lower dimensions goes like that, it's like these thin places sort of make them go like that, so they sort of cross. And I like to think of thin places as a place where dimensions cross. So I've actually met other beings from other dimensions through meditation. I have a video on my channel. It's quite old and not as well edited as my newer videos, and I don't articulate things as well in those older videos because I was still learning. But if you are interested in learning about these ETs and entities that I met, they're called the Curator, who I met in the Akashic Records during a meditation, and the Orionid, who I also met in another meditation where I was just doing a group meditation with my friends. I go into a bit more detail in that video, and I feel like I don't need to go into it right now because it's not really relevant to what we're talking about. It's just a little anecdote that needs to be added into this. So yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I've always been drawn to mainly two different types of witchcraft, and they are cosmic witchcraft and green witchcraft. I absolutely love the stars, I love astrology, I love anything to do with space, but I also love the aspects of green witchcraft because I love nature, I love being in the natural world, I love being with trees and being at mountains and breathing fresh air away from the city. But this also goes with how I love nature, but I would describe myself as a tech fairy. It started off as a joke, but the more I think about it, the more I am. And that's because although I love nature, I also really love my technology as well. Like I love my phone, I love drawing digital art, I love gaming, I love just tinkering around with electronics. I love trying to work out how computers work. Although I love nature, I can't ignore my love for technology either. So it puts me in a weird place because lots of people that I know would say that they would happily give up technology for nature, which, you know, that I'm not trying to bash that in any way, shape or form. Like I completely understand. But for me, I find it harder to let go of technology like that. So it's always made me feel sort of out of place or not really knowing where my place is. The same with how I'm drawn to both cosmic witchcraft and green witchcraft, but I just feel like I'm not quite either. I'm sort of somewhere in the middle. When I discovered Hedge Witchcraft, it all made a bit more sense because like I'm like a conduit between both cosmic and green witchcraft. I am a conduit between technology and nature. I genuinely truly believe that one of my purposes in this incarnation of life, in this energy cycle, is for me to combine nature and the digital world together. I don't know how, I don't know why, it's just a feeling that I have, and I've had it for quite a long time now. And as soon as I discovered Hedge Witchcraft, everything just sort of like clicked. I'm a bridge between both of these things, and I've just got to find the balance. But Hedge Witchcraft really helped me understand my identity like that, and I resonated with Hedge Witchcraft way more than I resonated with just cosmic witchcraft or green witchcraft by itself. It made sense that I was a bridge and a conduit between both. Same with technology and nature. So one more thing I do want to mention in this video is how I work with spiritual energy. I wasn't really sure how to bring this up in this video because I've mentioned energy loads of times in this video and I mention it a lot in all my videos, but I know that there is a huge stigma attached to the word energy, especially when it's said like spiritual energy. The online spiritual movement hasn't really helped with the phrasing either, and like if you use energy in a scientific term, it means something completely different to what we use it in the spiritual world or the online spiritual world. And you know, I get it. I understand why people are a bit hesitant and they think you're a bit woo if you're like using spiritual energy as a term. Like I completely understand why people would think that. When I was first introduced to the concept, I was a bit hesitant. I just want to like use this as sort of a disclaimer that I use the phrase spiritual energy or energy because I don't have a better word for it right now. So all I'm asking really is when I use the phrase spiritual energy or energy, please just bear with me because I'm looking for a better word for it because I think there is a better word for it than energy. I don't know what it is. It hasn't presented itself to me, but I'm confident that I'm going to find a better word in place of energy that doesn't have as much stigma or weight attached, but still means the same thing. Energy isn't a word either. It's like, it's a vibe. It's a feeling. Like I feel it when I perform magic, when I create art and music, when the mood in a room has changed, when I'm in a thin place, like I feel it heavy then. Just when I listen to music, let alone like try and make it, I feel it. Sometimes even just like the touch of another person, like you just feel it. And you know, I'm pretty sure you felt it too. You just maybe don't know what to call it. But the main reason I bring up energy like this right now is because as a hedge witch, I feel like hedge witches use energy a lot, especially in tandem with magic and thin places. So I just wanted to bring this up to say I'm looking for a different word for it because I'm going to keep talking about it. And I want people to take this concept seriously. One of the most beautiful things about hedge witchcraft and hedge witches is that no two hedge witches are the same. Every hedge witch follows their own path. And that's one of the beauties of hedge witch. It's being a hedge witch. It's not as strict in its path as other ones are. So your hedge witchcraft path is heavily influenced by your beliefs, your practices, what you're into, your interests, your personalities, and your learning methods. It all really depends on how you are as a person. That's how your hedge path and hedge magic will manifest. Some hedge witches, and this is one of the more popular examples of what a hedge witch is they're very similar to green witches, and they work a lot with herbs and medicinal things, natural medicinal things, which I feel some pull towards working with herbs because I like the concept of how we have all these things readily available to us from the earth. I think that's beautiful and that's magic in itself. But I stretch more towards hedge witches who work with thin places and energy and being the bridge between worlds. And by worlds, I don't just mean like our world and other dimensions. I mean anything really. Just being that bridge to bring balance between two things that seem a bit polar opposite, or they always run parallel to each other. Pretty much all hedge witches will spend time in nature though, and it's usually quite a solitary practice, so they usually spend a lot of it by themselves, which I'm quite used to doing. I do have friends that I do rituals with, but a lot of my practice is solitary, and over time I've grown to enjoy and accept that because witchcraft in general is quite a solitary practice overall. But I do enjoy the times that I do get to do rituals and magic with others. But I'm fine with my overall practice being solitary because I understand it a bit better now than I did 5 years ago. So yeah, that was a little bit about hedge witchcraft and thin places and energy. I am hoping this has provided you with a fresh perspective or a better perspective on hedge witchcraft than if you've never heard of it before or you were a bit confused by it, because it took me so long to truly understand what the hell a hedge witch was. Hopefully the way I phrased it here has helped you. I would suggest doing your own research on hedge witchcraft because there are some things you might find out that might resonate with you more than what has resonated with me, because there are things I've read about hedge witchcraft that don't really resonate with me at all, but they might resonate with you. So it's important that you do your own research. The majority of any path of witchcraft is doing your own research, and if you think you can avoid it, I am really sorry to tell you that you can't. Like, there's no cheat sheet with witchcraft, so watch videos, read books, read articles, do your thing. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it was informative and it's helped you a little bit in understanding a bit more about what hedge witchcraft is and what thin places are and how the two work together. So I am a hedge witch, and I'll be going into more stuff like this over time. I'm looking forward to catching you all in the next video. So as always, blessed be, guys. I hope you have a lovely day, whatever you're doing, and I will catch you very soon. Bye. One more quick thing, guys, because I just realised this after I finished recording that other video. I didn't mention how, like, I think divination and like tarot cards, scrying, and all things like that really work with hedge witchcraft too. I'm not going to go too into it because the video is pretty long already, but I really feel like a lot of hedge witches will find divination works really well with their particular craft too. I use a lot of divination tools. I use tarot mainly, oracle cards. I've gotten more into scrying over the last couple of years, or the last year-ish and a half. There's lots of different methods of divination though, and I just feel like this is another form of magic that works really well with hedge witches. So have a look into divination too and see if any form of divination resonates with you. Yeah, that was all. Just wanted to add that. So blessed be as always. I actually can't do the whole blessed be thing because I'm holding the camera. But yeah, I hope you have a lovely day. Bye.